All right, today I'm going to talk about LLCs and how they're taxed. I get this question all the time. I think there's a ton of misinformation and confusion about how LLCs are actually treated. So here's the thing. This is what I want you to understand first, and that is that an LLC is not actually an entity that's recognized by the IRS. It is a state-created legal entity. So the question becomes, how does the IRS tax this entity? And so there's different ways that an LLC can be taxed, and really it can be taxed in almost every way. So the main entities recognized by the IRS are sole proprietorships, you have partnerships, S corporations, and C corporations. By default, an LLC is taxed one of two ways. The first way is if you have one member, then it's taxed as a sole proprietorship, or in other words, it's disregarded. The IRS ignores it for tax purposes. So that means whoever the owner is, it's reported on their tax return. In fact, if an owner of the LLC is a partnership or a corporation, then that activity will be reported on the partnership's tax return or the corporation's tax return, whoever the owner is. So the IRS ignores it. The second way that an LLC is taxed by default is a partnership. And that's if you have two or more owners, then by default, an LLC is treated as a partnership. So those are the only two ways by default that an LLC is taxed. And notice how neither of those say LLC. It's either sole proprietorship or disregarded, or it is a partnership. With that said, before moving on, I will say that some states do actually tax LLCs differently. So for example, California does have an LLC tax return or LLC fee that has to be paid each year. So the state may treat it differently than the IRS for federal tax purposes. Okay, so let's say you don't want one of those default methods. Well, then an LLC can actually elect to be taxed as either a C corporation or an S corporation, whichever one you want, as long as you meet the requirements for those entities. So for example, an S corporation has limitations, like you can't have foreign partners, you can't have partners that are partnerships, and you need less than 100 shareholders to be an S corporation. So if your LLC doesn't meet any of those requirements, then electing S corp status is out of the question. And then of course, if you wanted to, you could elect to be a corporation. So I think the takeaway from this is that an LLC gives you a lot of flexibility from a tax standpoint, since you can essentially be taxed in any way that you choose. However, it's important to know that the entity type LLC itself, limited liability company, is really more of a legal jargon and refers to the liability you may or may not have as an owner. And of course, you'll want to talk to an attorney about the legal side of that. But generally speaking, LLCs can be a great entity choice from a tax perspective simply because of the flexibility. If you found this useful, or you want to know more about how those different entities are taxed, the partnerships, corporations, S corporations, so you can determine how your LLC should elect to be taxed, let me know and I'll make a video.